Good morning. Disinvestment Secretary Tuhin Kanta Pandey made a big announcement yesterday when he said that even in strategic sectors where the government was going to have 2 to 3 or maybe even 4 PSUs, that would apply even to the banking sector. Till now, people felt that the banking sector was kept outside the purview of this. And as far as the non-strategic sector was concerned, where sectors were concerned, where Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had said that only one PSU would be allowed, that is the details of that policy will probably be announced very soon, which is to say that the list of strategic and non-strategic sectors will come out quite soon. So this is good news to the extent that what it means is that very soon there will be a much bigger set of PSUs which the government can privatize. So there should be a level of excitement here. But, and there's always a but when it comes to the government of India, but the problem here is that even before this policy came out, there were a lot of PSUs that the government could have privatized. But what did it do instead? What it did instead was to get one PSU to buy another, was to get the PSUs to buy their own shares, was to do some marginal listing. Basically, everything that allowed the government to retain control of the PSUs was done here. So essentially, people are excited about the possibilities that have opened up. But as they say, the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. So people are still waiting. There's cautious optimism, if you will. Chief Economic Advisor Krishnamurthy Subramanian gladdened many hearts when he said yesterday that the government would be coming up with more fiscal, with another fiscal package. You would recall that when the Prime Minister and later the Finance Minister announced the details of the 20 lakh crore package, a lot of people said that the fiscal cost of this was only about 1 to 1.5 lakh crores. Now, even at that point, we had made 2 points. One, we had said the government actually needs to keep its powder dry to figure out where exactly the money is required and whether it can actually deliver what is required to be delivered. Secondly, the point that we had made was that things like the 3 lakh crore guaranteed loans to MSMEs, that is something also which needed to be added to this to the package, because when those loans went bad, it was the government of India that would make up and pay those loans there. So it's a good thing that the Chief Economic Advisor has said that there will be more money that will be spent. But there's an important caveat here that since the money is going to be spent, it is good that that money be spent sooner rather than later, because as happened in the demonetization phase, once companies start shutting down, it's going to be very difficult to revive them, and if they don't get relief fast, they will shut down. Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a fervent plea to US investors yesterday, asking them to invest in India and giving them reasons for this. He gave a great example how for the first time in India's history, it actually has more rural subscribers of the internet than urban ones. We have a total of 500 million subscribers already, and the Prime Minister said in his characteristic flourish that if US investors were excited about the fact that India had 500 million internet subscribers, well, there were 500 more who were waiting to be onboarded onto this revolution. The Prime Minister spoke of how $74 billion of FDI had come into India in FY20, and in just the last few months, $20 billion had come in. The Prime Minister never mentioned RGO, but this is the amount of money that RGO has managed to get from investors in the last 12 to 13 weeks. So given rising, US-China tensions, in fact, just yesterday the US government has asked China to shut down its consulate in Houston. So given the rising tensions, obviously a lot more US companies would be amenable to thinking about moving out of China. The question really is, will these companies move to India, or like many others, will they move into Vietnam? The unfortunate truth is that in many ways, India remains as problematic a place to do business as it remained in the past. And there's a lot of history of the government not fulfilling its promises to investors. And just to give you one example, the Prime Minister, for example, spoke of the $20 billion that had come into India in the last few months. Now the question is that will investors pay more attention to this money that RGO has managed to attract, or will they look at the fact that Vodafone Idea, and Vodafone is a foreign company, will they look at the fact that Vodafone Idea, which has invested $51 billion in India, that Vodafone Idea is on the verge of shutting down primarily due to unfair and unfortunate government policy. And nor is it just Vodafone. If you look at you look at retailers like Amazon or Walmart, These are both US companies, by the way. If you look at these companies, they are worried about the fact that the government has started implementing the rules on on e-tail in a very different manner from the time when these companies initially brought in their money. The latest on this, for example, is the requirement to do labeling and talk about the rules of origin. Now, certainly, rules of origin should be made visible, should be put, on top of the labels of products. But one, the time frame that is being given is very short. Secondly, and more important, if 95 to 96% of all Indian retail takes place offline, then why are these rules not being applied to the offline sector? You cannot have different rules for the offline and online players. I could go on and on, but from Hughes to Monsanto to T. Rowe Price, India has got a history of disappointing big investors. In fact, why just talk about these companies? If you ask big US defense contractors or the Indian companies that these firms have tied up with or are in the process of doing so, ask these companies what is the kind of order that they have got in the last 4 or 5 years from India's defense forces. Keep in mind that when Prime Minister Modi started his Make in India push, a key plank of this was the defense sector. So it is believed that since the government in any case is going to be spending a lot of money in defense, it can very quickly control the supply of orders. In fact, when the then Finance Minister Arun Jaitley was also the Defense Minister, he made a lot of announcements as to the orders which had been cleared. Ask these US firms and ask their Indian partners how many of these orders have actually flowed into their books. Niti Aayog CEO Amitabh Kant has an article on our Reddit page today. He's basically talking about how the coal sector reforms will change the industry and create a lot of employment. Certainly that's a very big move and we have to hope that it works out well. But again, keep in mind, this is something that was supposed to happen several years ago when then Finance Minister Arun Jaitley announced that this was going to happen. This is not to say that nothing is happening in India. The railways, as we speak, are sort of finalizing their efforts to bring in private players to actually run railways on the tracks which they own. And if memory serves, around 16 companies have already evinced their interest in bidding. But as we said in our editorial a few weeks ago, the problem in the railways is that there is no independent regulator as yet. So if private companies are really going to invest big money in India, in the railways, they need to be assured that there is an independent regulator who will make sure that there is a level playing field between them and the railways. No country can ever get it fully right. I think we need to keep that in mind. In fact, a lot of investors come into a country at the time when it is beginning to open up in the hope that they will be able to set up their businesses, they will be able to stabilize their businesses. So when the economy truly opens up, then they will be on the ground floor, as it were. But what this requires is for reforms to carry on in a steady flow. They cannot be a trickle, they cannot be in spurts. So reforms have to be there in a steady flow and there has to be no backpedaling at all. In India, unfortunately, the reforms stopped and they have started and they have stopped and they have started and there has been a lot of backpedaling. That's something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have to guard against. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.